And the question I want to ask your listeners is, there's no judgment here on what you're currently doing, because I think we've all been there, right? Like, we need to hire somebody. We've all been there. But here's the question I want to ask is, when you tolerate the poor performer, what is the impact on your best performer? And one of the best ways you can look at that is go and look at what your turnover has been. Who are you losing? Are you losing your best guys and gals, or are you losing your worst ones, the ones that you wish that would leave?
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.
And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Traci Austin with us today, and I am very excited about this conversation because it's very interrelated to what I do and she does. We've got kind of our own specialties in this area, and I'm just excited to get into it. So, to keep to our usual STS tradition, no one knows Traci better than Traci. So, Traci, fill us in, give us some backstory, bring us up to speed, and we'll get into the conversation.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I hate the question coming back, because it's like you never say as much about yourself as somebody else does. So my background is in human resources. Really spent my career building HR departments from the ground up, 10 years in nonprofits, and also lots and lots of time in trades organizations, whether that was HVAC or general contractors or manufacturing that is serving the trade industry. I also grew up in construction with family-owned construction businesses, and my mom was in HR. So, that family conversation piece kind of flowed into what I do. One thing I do think is really important is we mix coaching in every single thing that we do, and that accountability and empowerment of yourself and your people. And so what we believe here at Elevated is every individual has a right and a choice to be fulfilled in their work. And you and I, as a leader, have an obligation to create the container for them to be successful.
That's awesome. That is the spot on too. So you've got, again, another reason why we connect was you've got extensive experience in this field, in the trades and service, the home services industry, which is obviously a big niche for us too. But I love the people aspect, because I do it, and I'm going to be totally transparent. I'm not great at it. Okay. I'm a man with like really low empathy. Like, I was in the negatives. I've improved. I'm up to 0 now. I'm up to zero empathy. But so that doesn't really work well when you're trying to really work with people. Now, if people are aligned with me and we all just want to work and do our thing, hey, we all get along, but there's no real work in that, right? From my part, it's just, hey, let's go work and get things done. So I'm excited to dive into this because it's I'm going to call it a complex arena, okay, dealing with people, because they're people, right? There's all different. So wherever you want to start on this, I think really becomes, I don't know if you want to go with, and you can tell we don't plan anything here on STS, okay? We were strictly conversational, so we will find our way, and it's always great, as you've seen from all the other episodes or heard.
Absolutely.
But really, does it begin with hiring, or is there something prior to hiring? Now, I know we can go leadership, we can do that, but really what's kind of your focal point when you get involved with a company?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Where does that begin?
Yeah, it starts way before hiring. And this is going to get into your realm, which I don't do. I just pick it up. And that is, what is your mission, vision, and values? And ensuring that that is incredibly clear and that there is clarity in that for your team members. So it starts with that. And then from there, it goes into, what is the job to be done? Very specifically, what is the job description? And I know, I'm hearing you roll your eyes and say, why do I need a job description? Well, if we don't have clarity over the work to be done, we don't know what to do. And so, if we look at what does winning look like, Richard, you and I, had a conversation before this, and we essentially defined what does winning look like for this podcast to be successful. And you're going to be on my show, the People Strategy Podcast, and we had a conversation around what does winning look like for that. So if we don't have alignment on what winning looks like for each position, each person, each project, we're going to fail. So that definition is really important. Why we do that before the hire is we need to know who we are hiring for. I cannot tell you how many times I've been brought in to support a team and they're saying, hey, Tracy, this is what we want for it. And I'm going, all right, you're asking for a unicorn in red heels with a construction hard hat on, holding a hammer and a MacBook. Help me understand what's happening here, because we're not going to find that person.
Right. That's so important. And I'm totally with you here. A big thing that we do, obviously, you mentioned that job function. Where do people fit? You have a description, you have a position, okay? But people give a position, but they never give the definition of the position. What are the specific job functions this person has to be able to accomplish, right? And like you said, what does success look like on the day, the week, the month, the quarter, the year, right? If they don't know that stuff, if they don't know what to do, I talk about this a lot, you can't bring someone in to like figure it out. That's not what they're looking for. A job. You're hiring someone for a job. They want to come in and be trained and be told exactly what to do and how do I win, and they go and do that every day.
Right. Yep. So this is where our team comes in, is really that figuring it out. So we've got something that we call the People Strategy Roadmap. And so, Richard, if you were my client, my first question to you in our kickoff meeting would be, what is your current business strategy? And what are those very specific business results that you're looking for? And we can do 1 year, we can do 3 years. Beyond 3 years, the world changes and we're going to be wasting a lot of hot air. So let's start there. Okay. But like those outcomes are key. What is the outcome for the organization that you're looking for? Once we know the outcome and your strategy to get there, now we can start looking at what happens in the middle. And guess what? This is where the whole thing blows up, right? It's processes and people. So we need to figure out what processes and people do we need in place to do this. And that's where the fun starts. And it goes into 3 buckets: hire, retain, and train.
Nice. I'm going to jump back real quick on the first thing you said was outcomes. This is so critical. I think so many businesses don't understand the actual outcome of the hire, of the position. I've done this with companies. Like, you get your 10 questions you're going to ask every interviewee, right? So here's my question. Why do you do this? I'm like, but what I do for them, I say, well, what's the outcome of this question are you looking for? Because you're asking questions and you're hearing things, but if the person conducting the interview, whether it's you, the owner, or someone else on your team, they have to understand why they're asking this. And they need to write down the answer, because the outcome is very specific to the eligibility, the qualification for the job position, right? Is that what you find as well?
Yeah. And it's a little bit more nuanced than that, because it's not just the position itself. We're going to look at the position itself. We're going to look at the team that this person is a part of. And for that team, what is the strategy that team is executing? Because if we don't have the right players on that team to execute that strategy, we will fail. And I'll give you an example of that. My guess is most of your clients have some sort of a sales team, right? And there's more than 2, but there's typically 2 different types of sales folks. One is, I'm going to call that person the hunter, right? They're going to go out, they're going to network, they're going to meet 500 people, they're going to talk to every single person in the room. They're going to have those 500 business cards, they're going to come back and they're going to do nothing with it. But they met 500 people in the room, and that was amazing. And then we have the farmer. The farmer is going to begrudgingly go to that networking event. They're probably going to be very strategic, meaning they're going to look at who's there and pick the 2 people that they want to talk to, and they're going to go find them, and they're going to go deep. They're going to spend the entire time talking to 2 people. Guess what? They're going to follow up with them, and I can almost guarantee you they're going to close them. So the juxtaposition here is that hunter can get us in the door. The farmer is going to take the long range approach in order to close it. If we start putting hunters and farmers together in pods, we are going to get much better results for our organization, and our sales folks are going to stop fighting against each other for commissions and start competing against the organization across the street. And that's an example of how we set up our teams to play to the individual strengths of the people, but we're setting team goals that align to individual goals for the job, but those team goals have to cascade with the outcomes for the organization as a whole. So now we're tying our goals together: org, team, individual.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I think a lot of people think they need all the same kind of people on the sales team to use sales specifically. It's like, well, you don't, because that's like in any relationship. Okay, the differences matter. You know, whether it's the attraction to different people, right? Like it's just like coaching. There's people who will coach with me, right? They'll be in my class. There's people like, I'm not working with that guy. Like, he is too intense.
And there's people that you're like, I will never work with that individual. And I know we both coach, and, you know, you coach execs. I coach the mid-level managers. Those are just stepping into leadership. Like, that is so fun to me. Can I coach the execs? Yeah. Do I want to? No.
And that's important to know. This goes in this. So I love this, because this is like what we do, but it's the same thing in your business. If you got an HVAC business, if you got whatever you have, it doesn't matter. It's like you have to understand this dynamic of people in the business on your team. Like you said, there's, you know, and I'm not a huge sports guy, but I know a little bit. But like, your tight end and quarterback are two very different positions. The center and the tight end is a different position, right? You need all those different positions to execute a play. You don't get to do it with two people, right? So it's really important to understand who you're putting on the field, and that's your expertise, right? You really help develop this so they have a process when they're filling these positions. First is knowing their position, right? Understanding what it entails and everything else. And then where do they need to fit, you know, specifically, and how are we taking them through I'll call it a filter. I don't know, you may have another word for it, but I'm like, I got to filter people through it. I try to create processes that filter candidates, you know, to get rid of we'll call them C players to be nice. Get rid of the C players, because no one wants a C player on their team. We're looking for B's and A's, you know, and everyone thinks they could always have all A's, and a lot of times you don't. But again, we understand the dichotomy of what needs to be on the team, right?
Right. And so there's two additional approaches here that we take. So I love data science, and so often HR doesn't use data science a lot. We do, right? So there's certain assessments that you can use for hire. We utilize predictive index because there's 4 levers we're looking for that have individuals engaged and wanting to do the work. One is, are they in the right job, right? So we want to make sure from a natural behavioral standpoint that someone is the right job. Let me give you an example. If you have an entry-level, you know, journeyman position, or not journeyman, but an entry-level laborer position, right? Entry-level, they're swinging the hammer. We're going to teach them how to frame. They're framers. Within that, we know that they need to be process-oriented. They need to be detail-oriented. We need to make sure they know how to measure something and actually get it right, that they're not cutting things too short. All of the things, right? Like, measure twice and cut once. Let's make sure we get it right. I don't know how many times I heard that growing up, right? And so, you know, we need to make sure that the detail orientation and the process orientation is there. Now, these folks are typically pretty analytical. They're laying out exactly what needs to happen. And they're going to be responsive to the plans, to what the foreman's telling them. They're naturally responsive to what's there. That's typically who we want in that role. Now, if we bring someone into that role, like myself, who is an individual that is a very independent leader, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. It's probably not going to be great on that type of a team, right? I think out loud, meaning I'm going to be talking the entire time. Probably not great for getting that work done. I will see something that needs to change. I'm an amazing change agent in an organization where I can see it, and I'll get it 80% of the way done. Then I'll see a squirrel and go over there and do that thing. It's great for sales. It's great for consulting. It's not great for that framer position that we need. And Deadlines, those can be negotiable at times. And I need that support of a team for very, very, very specific details. I would be a horrible framer.
Right.
Now, would a framer be a great in my role? Probably not. So we want to make sure we get the right person in the right role.
Yeah, it's really critical. And I think too many times, especially in let's just take the last 4 years. Okay. So it's 2025. Let's go 4 years back to today. It's been everyone looking for anyone with a pulse. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's been such for a million reasons, but we know the main ones, this shortage of labor, especially in the industries that we focus on. Again, home services, the trades, construction, things like that, skilled labor especially, but even just that entry level has been really, really difficult. They just haven't been there, and what you learn is also not about how much you pay them. It's not that either. If you go, hey, I pay them more. I got, I'm paying them this much and I'm paying that much and I'm still not getting the right people. So, which I kind of like that happened, Traci, because it goes back to what you do specifically. Like, it's not about that. And I always tell people it's not about the money. Money matters, but it's kind of third on the list.
Right.
So talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about money, and we're going to talk about culture. So you do need to be in the ballpark. Wages increased significantly. If you look at how they compounded over the last 4 years, we're looking at an average of 20%. Wages did increase. And if you did not, pay attention to that, you're probably losing some of your best people. However, for retention, the folks that are leaving started to look to leave because of some other reason, and money was the icing on the cake, is typically what we see. Now, for hiring, you need to be in the ballpark, and that's incredibly important. When you're hiring folks, you need to be in the ballpark. But where I really want to kind of take this conversation is to something that we call an employee value proposition. And yes, that's a big word, which essentially means, how are you attracting the best people based on who you are, which goes back to mission, vision, values. Like I said, our firm does not go through that exercise to create those with you. Richard, that's more of your area, right? We're picking it up and saying, tell me what this means, right? And I don't want words on a wall. I want to know, what are the behaviors that are acceptable or not acceptable inside of your organization? And not just acceptable, but do you actually address those behaviors, or do you let them fly? I had a client where someone threw a come along across the yard, and it was just the shoulders were shrugged. And it was like, yeah, that just happens here. And I'm like, hold on a minute. We're going to accept that behavior and there's going to be zero consequences for it. Yeah, that's just what we do here. Guess what? I doubled my rates and found a different client. All right. That was not a culture I was willing to be involved in. And so, because they weren't willing to make those changes. Now, there's other clients where we'll name things and they immediately say, yeah, actually, I've just never thought about it, but why are we putting up with that? Why are we putting up with the poor performance? So now all of a sudden, we start naming it. We name, hey, that actually falls into poor performance here. And now as a team, we're going to define performance expectations. And once we start defining and ensuring that everyone on the team has the same definition for something, now we can start to move the needle, because we've removed the, well, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, which happens a lot.
Yeah, really, and just a great point here. This is so important to understand, because in our industries that we work with, right, it's hands-on. It is people dependent. Okay, it's really good for us. Okay, keeps us working, but in the trades, you got to have people who can work. Okay, they're not going to be replaced by AI or anything else. So you've got to be able to manage people. And I love that you really define setting the standards, okay? Because a lot of guys just don't have the standards. They tolerate that poor behavior, that something that's not in alignment with that company, because they need to get work done, right? But they're not looking at the bigger picture that you are, that I would be. Like, how does that actually affect not just your team who's working, but the outside, for the customer who's watching this work being performed? I used to get with my first business, I remember the homeowners would tell me, you know what? I could just sit here and watch your guys work all day. everyone's got a job. One guy's just whistling a little bit. They don't even really talk to each other. They just do the work and they build this incredible stuff. And that was like the best compliment I could ever get, because I didn't have to be there. They all had things. Matter of fact, when I would show up and I'm like, I pop and I just kind of jump in the hole. I'm building water features. I start doing something and they're like, remember Jesus, my best friend? He's like, we don't do that right now. I go, okay. So I start doing something else. He said, Richard, we don't really do that right now. That's going to come a little later. And I look at him, I go, you want me to just go get lunch for everyone? He goes, that'd be great. So I climb out of the hole. I'm like, okay, these guys definitely don't need me. Okay. As good as I am, or I'll say was, these guys got it, and that was awesome. Right. I love that. So now I just show up and I bring food and drink,
Perfect.
and just pat them on the back and see you later. So I totally get it, but I think it's so important that if you haven't developed these standards of operation, meaning behavior, okay, it really begins with behavior on these job sites, it's really, really difficult to have any kind of consistency with your labor force, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other part of that is once we start holding folks accountable, they're going to step up to it. And the question I want to ask your listeners is, there's no judgment here on what you're currently doing, because I think we've all been there, right? Like we need to hire somebody. We've all been there. But here's the question I want to ask is, when you tolerate the poor performer, what is the impact on your best performer? And one of the best ways you can look at that is go and look at what your turnover has been. Who are you losing? Are you losing your best guys and gals, or are you losing your worst ones, the ones that you wish that would leave? If you see you're losing your best people, you have an accountability issue, and the issue is you.
Bingo.
Just let that one sit for a minute.
I always tell people, Tracy, well, if I'm talking to an owner, and myself included, I'm like, you're the problem. Everything starts at the top. We're often in our own way.
And it's fixable.
It is fixable. That's it. And if you're coachable and trainable, wonderful things can happen, because we know the people that aren't, and we can't really help them at all, and we just say goodbye. But I think it's really important what you're saying, because I call them, like, you got your slacker Steves. That's your low bar guys, below the low bar. Then you got your super Sallys, right? Our A players do everything, never be told. They get everything done and do all that stuff. But you're right. Eventually they go, well, wait a minute, why is Steve still here? I do all this, and he doesn't even get to the low bar.
Right.
Okay. And they just start looking for other places to go.
Right.
Because it's not where they're not appreciated. I mean, that could be part of it, but it's like you're tolerating this. Yeah, I want to work with people who are somewhere in the same realm as I am.
So if you're listening, that's great, but I have my hands on top of each other here with like a line in between. And what happens is our performance is like waves, right? We've got our low and we've got our high. Our goal is to change and increase what those high and low threshold levels are, but also narrow it. A lot of times we see that's really wide. And what happens is if we continue to lose our best people, it actually lowers. And what we want is that area of performance to narrow, which equals more consistency, but we also need to raise the bar. How do we do that? Core values. Culture, where we know what winning looks like. We are all committed to what that is. We've got the resources and the training and the support and appreciation in order to do that. And for some of you listening in who is sitting in your truck right now going, yeah, right, Tracy, you've never been out on the field. Okay, so let's think about that. I worked a lot with hardscape landscaping. That's very, very, very physical work that does have somewhat of a shelf life of how long can you do that work before your body starts to give out. So what are we doing with our folks to ensure that, one, they have the safety items that they need to be successful, that we don't have injuries, but two, that we've got the processes and the tools in place in order to do that. And guess what? There are, things within hardscapes. Hey, did we, build the back wall and the gravel and all those things behind it for water and this and that we're double checking as we go. It's really easy to cut corners and put mulch on top of it that nobody sees until a year later when that wall starts to fall down. And these are the things that when we pay attention to it and hold each other accountable for it and not wait for a call from a client because a wall fell down a year later, guess what? That's also a reputation for our clients, but it's also the reputation for who's going to come in and work with our crew, because we will need to be hiring more people.
Right. I love it. And I love you're saying this, because again, we speak the same language, right? I think you may articulate it better than I do, but this is how I put it. Okay. So you've got your high bar and you got a low bar. And I've had these discussions with other contractors and podcasts. It's a lot of fun. It's important to understand, like you said, you've got that gap between the two, right? We have a high bar and we have a low bar, and there's a gap in there. Now, like you said, now I exactly agree with you. We want to lessen that gap. But what I tell people is that, okay, so here's my low bar that I set for my company, and John shows up to work and he does everything at the low bar. Okay, but he always shows up. He always works. He's been here for 2 years. He's a low bar guy. He's not asking what else he can do. He's not doing any of that stuff. And my question is he a good employee? And some people say no, and I'll say, well, yes, because he shows up every day, right? He does the low bar that I set as the owner. Mm-hmm. So it's good enough for him. That's that guy. Now, like you're saying, Traci, if we raise the low bar, again, you can't just drive it up and have everyone at the high bar, because that's not realistic. But if we could slowly, incrementally raise that, and then we get those people and they get it. So the problem is, a lot of people, first, they don't have a low bar. We already talked about that, kind of, right? But when you've got that low bar, you have to decide what you accept. It's kind of been the theme so far, right? So that low bar is so critical. High bar is like, I get it, but it could be anywhere, right? Like a high bar is great. It's the low bar we got to focus on, because that's what develops your culture and everything, right?
Right. You know, words and mindset, I believe, have a huge impact. And instead of calling a low bar, let's call it meets expectations. Let's define what meets expectations are. And if you are below meets expectations, you're gone. However, meets expectations is the expectation that we have for folks inside of our organization. And it shifts it, because I don't want to be called a low bar guy. Girl, whatever. Right. But if I meet expectations and all I want to do is meet expectations, I'm okay with that. So I do think that the way we label things is incredibly important. And guess what? This is where your people strategy planning comes into place. If I don't know why I'm on a landscape crew right now, but that's where my head's at. So you're on a landscape crew and you've got 15 guys on your crew, and then you've got 4 or 5 office leadership, whatever, sales, all the rest. But you've got 15 core guys that are on that crew. Some are foremen, you might have 2-man crews where there's a lead on it, whatever that is, right? The key here is, when those guys and gals are out, they know exactly what they need to do. They know exactly where that bar is. But from the people strategy standpoint, and a Richard, or you as the owner of this landscape company, you know the trajectory that you're looking for. You're saying, hey, look, we're looking to actually expand into the Milwaukee market. We're currently in Beloit, and we're in Lake Geneva, and we're in Rockford. This is where Richard and I both sit, so we're going to use that for this example. But we're looking to expand. We know to do that, we need 4 guys. 2 of them need to be leads. We need a foreman and potentially a salesperson for that area, along with 6 folks that are going to be on the crew. All right, how are we going to go about doing that? Well, for the 4, can we pull those from our current rank, folks that have been in the field for a year or 2 that are really showing some leadership skills? Let's start testing that where we're at, because this stuff doesn't happen overnight. And not every single person is a people leader. And there's nothing faster than killing a culture and killing a good work ethic than putting someone in a role that they don't want to be in.
Yeah, really important. That's a really good point. And I think when you look at that, when you talk about an expansion, right? And can you pull from your existing team, but you're still going to have a vacancy, right? There's still going to be a vacuum now. You pulled them out, but the advantage is you're there, right? The expansion, if you can send your trained people out, they can grow that without micromanagement, right? Additional training. So now you can be a little bit closer on the development of the next of the replacements of those guys on the home team, if you will, right? So I really like that, and I think you're right when you talk about, and I love the don't call it a low bar. I'm totally with you on all that. Words have meaning, and I get it for sure, because the meet expectations is critical. I do it on vision too. Like I tell people, we have a strategic vision we're working towards to achieve. It's future cast. We're not there yet. We're working towards it. And when someone isn't performing, okay, or meeting expectations, I just let them know you're not fulfilling the strategic vision. You know, everybody else is working towards the vision. You're not, so you're not on the team, right? It's a similar thing. But I want to make sure that we understand that whatever those expectations are, and a thing you brought into this was leading people, that is like, I'm going to just call it a skill. I don't know how you actually categorize it because some people are better at it than others. Doesn't mean you're born with it, but they have that skill or the training and the ability and the experience to lead people because that's really difficult. And I think your point was right, Traci, when you said you get that person who can't do that, you'll crush a team. You'll destroy morale in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And things will get really bad really fast.
Right. And this is all a part of that people strategy. So, Richard, as you and I have talked, we have niched our business very, very narrowly because we know what we do really well. And there's 3 key training programs that we offer. And I'm just, you can go create your own, whatever. But, I want to name what they are because this is how we grow people and ensure that they have the opportunity to give this a chance. Is one of our programs we call our mentor program. This program is really focused on the individual that's currently in a line level role that has shown some sort of potential, leadership potential, foreman potential. And what we do is we take them through training and then we give them a roadmap, and now they are the buddy as a peer of new hires coming in. What this program does is it solves 2 issues. It solves turnover in the first 90 days. I want you to think about what is your turnover in the first 90 days at the beginning of your season. It's probably 50% or more. It's pretty high. The second question I have for you is, do you have, a leadership vacuum where you don't have anyone in your organization that you can promote to that next level? This program essentially addresses those 2 items, and it lets us know, hey, does this individual want more of this? And even if they don't, and they never want to go into a leadership role, they want to stay as an individual contributor, amazing. We need them.
Yes.
Just as you stated, guess what? We still increase their skill set by investing in this 8 hours of training.
Yeah, totally. And I think, here's what I found coaching so many owners. We have this default system where we think everyone thinks like us. Okay. It's the number one mistake you make. Okay. You're unique. You started a business. You went through all the headaches. You did all the stuff, and now it's succeeding. No one thinks like you. Okay. Unless they're another owner. So to think, why don't they do this? Right. So not everyone wants to be a leader. Not everyone wants to run the company. Not everyone wants 15 guys under them. Okay. It's important to understand that. But like you said, I was consulting for Dollar General, right? The big thing. And we're down at the original one in Kentucky. I'm down there talking to the guys. There's a guy on a forklift, okay, cruising by. They go, see that guy? 50 years. 50 years he's been on that forklift working here. I'm like, 50 years? I'm like, that you're talking unicorns. Okay. But here's a guy like totally content. I mean, who wouldn't want a team of those guys? Okay, they're going to be there, be doing stuff. And just as a side funny thing, I go, imagine all the stuff he's run into with that forklift. But just when you find those people, again, they're very happy. They're very content, and actually they're not the norm, right? But there are those people who they're good with that. I was taught, 30 some years ago, I was working on a landscape company coming out of the Marine Corps, and I'm all in, right? I work it out, very high pace all day. I'm going, and this older Mexican, one of the foremen comes up to me. We're sitting there having lunch. He goes, let me ask you something. I got to ask you a favor. Like, you see all these guys, we're laying sod and doing this. He goes, they're going to do this for the rest of their life. Okay. You're not. So you're working like 4th gear, like all day. We need to do 3rd gear all day. They work in 3rd gear all day because they're going to do this for 30 more years. And I just looked at him and go, okay, that's like the coolest thing I've ever heard. I'm like, you got it, man. I'll mellow out, So I mellowed out a little bit and then went on, started a business. but that understanding, here's guys who are like, no, they're going to do this all day, and they will outwork you. They'll wear you down through attrition. You'll never keep up with them, right? Like you can put all this. So it's just one of those, things you got to think about of the positions on your team. Who's going to do what for how long? Like when you mentioned with the hardscapes, I got guys, they're moving, brick and wheelbarrows. Like we need machines for this. You need to bring the pallet closer, right? It's real simple things that with my guys, I did it. Initially started digging ponds by hand. Back here, I'm like, well, this is no good. I got a mini excavator. We could come in through the gate, come in and we could dig with a bucket and we could put in the skid. So we started to automate our stuff, right? Get the right tools, and my guys never left because they weren't killing themselves every single day, So it's these kind of things I like to think about, and like what you're bringing up is really, it's, for lack of a better term, it's your organizational chart.
Yeah. Yep. And as we talked about, business strategy, business results. Where does it break down in the middle? Processes and people. Well, guess what? Everything you're bringing up here is a process with the right tools in order to do it.
So important. So important. Here's the thing with owners. And I know you deal with them and I deal with them both, and we do a little bit different stuff, but I think the similarity is going to be, I don't think whatever they're working on, they really have the time. And this is why I wrote my book, Escape the Owner Prison, and all this other stuff. But to get an owner to be able to step back and have some time to see a vision like that, what are you trying to achieve? Like you said, what are the core values of your company? Have they been defined? Right? What do they really mean for? What do you actually expect? We talked about the meets expectations. What do we actually want this to operate as and or to become?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so often it is not what we think it is, right? It is not profit. It is not going to be about, as many projects as we can get. It could be, we just want to beautify every single community that we're in. And if it's for homeowners, we want to do that for our homeowners because it increases the quality of their living. And through that, we are increasing the quality of living for the folks that work for us because we're able to give them really good jobs with decent salaries, benefits, all of those things to increase their quality of living, right? So, and that's an example. You've got to come up with what that is for you. But what I will say, and I know your listeners are all hard folks that don't have a heart, and I say that with this laughter in my voice because it's so not true, but like really think about it. Does that pull at your heartstrings or not? And if your why doesn't pull at you emotionally, you don't have a good one and you need to keep working on it.
Right. What I teach is we need to know who we serve, how we serve them, and why we serve them. Okay. It's not to put A into B and get paid. Okay. And it's exactly what you're saying. And once you do that with an owner, when you take that time and we build out the strategic vision, which is like 10 pages long, and we read it to the team, and you can't believe the emotion because you're giving them purpose. That's about purpose, right? That's giving them like, here's purpose, right? Here's feedback. Here's how we do this, how we become the hero in this journey, this customer journey on the inside, how we become the hero in that journey, and why we're critically important to make all this happen. And that why, again, isn't just so we get paid and can do another job. It's like you just described. It's beautification. It's that pride of coming home. They get to come home and the lines are perfect in the lawn. Okay, sticking in the landscaper theme, right? The bushes are perfect. Everything's mulchy, and it's home.
And
it's
I don't
perfect.
have to lift my finger and do it.
Exactly. We're providing high value. And that's what we get paid well, because we deliver extremely high value. All our people are professionals. They're in the uniforms. Our trailers are clean. Our equipment works properly, right? We understand what we're actually speaking, okay? We limit whether it's profanity or whatever we're doing, loud music, whatever that is that might disturb other potential customers, neighbors, or other things. All this is part of that vision, right? And what we're fulfilling. And I will tell you, through all my years of experience, when you roll that out, you will see such a sea change of your people. Because we talk about the culture. That's creating or changing culture. When you develop that, now you have the standard. Now you have how to meet the expectations, right? Now they understand what they are, that communication, and you continually come back to that vision. It's not the mission statement that's on the wall and everyone walks by it every day and it just becomes wallpaper. This is how we live and operate. And when we fulfill it, we write a new one. You know, like, hey, it's been 2 years. We fulfilled everything we put out. What's next? Right. And then we go forward. And that's what keeps people engaged. That's been my experience. Because and let's talk about this a little bit too, Traci. Really, let's get into retention. Give us some insights on retention, because this is a killer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things I really like to look at to get folks thinking is I want you to, and I really do, so if you need to pause this, pause it. What are all your complaints about your current staff? What are all of your complaints, right? So they make everyone uncomfortable. They badmouthed us to someone else. They refused to do tasks. They made offhand jokes that borderline offensive. They're great performers, but they create drama everywhere. They do the task 80% of the way, and then they don't finish it. They don't take ownership and pride in their work. Those are all complaints. When we look at those complaints, what is the request underneath? And I can flip this, right? Like those are typically owner's manager complaints. Let's look at employee complaints. They don't give me the tools to do the job that I need. They don't give me enough time to do it. I don't know what this is supposed to look like at the end. I don't have the team around me to help support this. You know, we're working 12-hour days and it's 95 degrees out and we don't have the support we need. Guess what? We had 3 rain days and now we can't meet the job. So now we just worked Saturday, Sunday, and I missed my kid's birthday, right? I'm making up these, but yet they're things we hear all the time. So whether that's on the employee side or on your side as that owner, I really want you to think into every single one of those complaints. Here's what a complaint is. A complaint is just a poorly worded request. So what is the request through every single one of those complaints? We're not going to have the time to go through all that today, Richard. But if we think about it, like, Richard, pick one. Let's just look at one.
Customer, let's go. I'll go on the employee side. Yeah, we don't, I like what you said. We don't know the end goal.
Yep. So why do we lose people? If I don't feel like the work that I'm doing has impact and I don't feel like what I'm doing is valued, because as soon as I feel like, oh my gosh, that wall looks incredible and I can't wait, and the homeowner comes by and they're like, that is awful, I don't like it, take it down and redo it, I'm crushed because I'm like, I just spent 4 days doing that and I got a backache and you're telling me it's crap? What? Right? And so that has people want to leave. Therefore, the request is, how do we get clarity at the beginning of the job from both the client and from the expectations of the organization? So here's the request. How do we ensure we have agreement between the client and the organization, and how do we ensure that that is crystal clear to every single member of our team?
Exactly. Yeah. It's really important to understand that, because, again, both sides. Like I said, when you're listening, when you're interpreting, I think that's a better word, interpreting these complaints as a request, okay, things change, because we always say every problem is an opportunity. Okay. So that complaint is an opportunity because it's a problem. They're saying they have a problem. They don't get this. They don't get that. They don't have the right tools. Okay. Well, how do we fix that? If it means getting the right tools, that's a pretty easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless it's a $300,000 piece of equipment, they want to make their job a little easier. Okay, so we got to be logical on this, but it's really important to understand that. And I like the way you're putting this, because if we're not engaged that way, and again, I was not that great my first 20 years in business. I was about doing the work, and I had guys who just worked, and I was just lucky. I sifted the right people, and we were able to work together, and it was good. But I didn't have this kind of knowledge that you have. I wasn't looking at my people that way.
Right.
I just thought everyone should be me.
Right. Which is a completely unrealistic expectation and is going to drive everybody away.
Yes.
But the other side of this is, think about, we're taught how to complain. We're really not taught how to make requests. if we think about our work culture, if we're constantly complaining, is it positive or is it negative? It's negative. If we start shifting this into requests and start actually meeting what those requests are, we just completely shifted the culture. I'll give you an example. I'm meeting with a client's team tomorrow. We met a year and a half ago, and it was complaint after complaint after complaint. Several folks left that they thought were key players, and we went through and we defined what needs to happen. Everyone has job descriptions. We've been holding individuals accountable. There's been a number of things that have been happening. And at this meeting tomorrow, guess what we're doing? The complaint, we don't have enough people. We're bringing on several folks. We don't have clear expectations for interns coming in. Guess what? There's a whole intern training program. We don't have this. Guess what? We have it now. Did it take us a year and a half? Yes. Was there belly aching in between? Yes. Was it an incredible lift from that owner? Yes. Have we completely shifted the culture? Yeah, we really have. So there's an example. This is a process. And what's so important for your owners listening in is ensuring that there's transparency in this process with your team. Hey, I heard you say, you didn't have XYZ tool to do this, or we didn't have this process. You know what? That's not something we can flip and do overnight because it's a $300,000 request. Right. But here's what we can do. Guess what? I understand we don't have enough people for the jobs we have. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to throttle back a little bit on accepting new clients coming in and only accept this narrow amount that actually is the work that we like and it's a higher profit margin until we can get the people in, then we'll open it up again. When we're transparent with what's happening, it's like, oh, they are listening. And now all of a sudden they're going to start going to bat for us as we are for them.
Yeah, that is exactly correct. This is what I'm doing, the same thing. It's like you have to listen. You can ask and you have to listen. You can hear complaints or you can ask for complaints. And if you ask for complaints, one thing I wasn't great at, like I'd hear them. Not really. I just voice it. So it was a vent, but there was no solution.
But were you one where they would complain about it and you'd be like, oh, they're just, that's just them. They're just a bunch of complainers versus like, all right, now we just exasperated the problem and we just made it worse because we asked the question.
Yes. And there were some people who you can go complain somewhere else because you're not any good anyways. So, we all can, from our different seats, we can see things differently. But I'm with you. I've helped companies do the same thing, like less work, higher prices, higher value, higher quality, all this stuff. And like, okay, you're doing 12 jobs. What if we did 4 and made more money? We did 4 at a time and you had more time. Okay, let me show you how we do that. And the whole world changes. Mm-hmm. Everybody's happy. The owners' wives are happy. Okay, because they get to see their husband and their kids get to see their husband, you know what I mean? Their father. And so it's like, wow, that's really good. And we're making more money and we're not as stressed out. We understand because there's only so much labor on your team, only so many subs you can hire to get this work done. And it's that realization. It usually takes someone getting in that bad position and then having someone come help them throttle back. And you say throttle back, I mean, they're slowing down, but it's not. You're regrouping so that you can be more focused, more deliberate on exactly what you deliver, which is really important. And I think when your team, the transparency aspect is really important, what you said, because you have to let them know. You can't ivory tower this thing. It doesn't work. I don't mean you have to be down there swinging a hammer with them, but if you let them know what the plan is, and I do this with owners' families as well. If your family, if your wife and children, husband, whatever the case, if they don't know what you're doing, I don't mean they need to be part of the business, but if they understand you're in a growth phase for the next few months, you're in expansion, or we're going to scale, or we're pulling back, how can they be a cheerleader for you? How can they know? You just come home and say, you wouldn't understand this business, and you're all cranky, you don't want to talk to anyone. Okay, that's not good. Okay, but if they understand, hey, for the next 2 months, we're going to be doing this. I'm going to be a little taken away on this, and this, but then we'll be good, and it'll go back to normal. And that is a communication transparency aspect with your family as well. From an owner standpoint, it's really important. I have that in each level that we graduate to, we work on. Like, just let them know what's going on. You have to share. You're not really looking for input. from your family, right? Like you don't tell me what to do per se, but like let them know where you're at in this. And now they're part of it. They feel included and they get it when you've got the mood swings. Okay, because you're going to have them,
Right.
and they understand.
And I will push back on this a little bit to say there is a point where sometimes there is input, which is, hey, you've actually been going full throttle for a year and a half, and we've got this vacation or that or this plan. How do we do a little bit of negotiating here? I'm totally okay with this. However, there's this and this that I want you to be there for, right? And I think that that's important. That's also a key piece when you're working with team members too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did. Yes. You're going, you probably never did that for a long time, did you? And I said, maybe not. Okay. But I do it now. Okay. And you're exactly right. There has to, and communication, and we can talk about this a bit too, just communication, you either can communicate or you can't. Okay. It's either a priority or it's not. And if it's not a priority to communicate, doesn't mean you have to be the greatest communicator in the world, but that bleeds into everything.
It absolutely does.
Right. So talk about that a little bit, because I know what it creates. The lack of communication is probably the number one complaint of customers. Okay, let's forget about just on the team. Your customers, you go look at the number one complaints in our industries here is the lack of communication or poor communication.
Right. Yeah, and that communication, there's two pieces of this. One is, we're human and we forget things and we start going 100 miles an hour and we're like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that. The other side of communication is if we look at this, especially with our clients, and I would also say with our employees, what are things that we can start to processize? Is that a word? I just made it one.
I like it.
And
I'm keeping it, writing it down.
Processize? I don't know. And automate. And I don't mean this in a way that essentially says we don't have connection, but there's certain things, hey, at certain points of the process, we know the next phase is coming. All right, we need to pull building permits. We need to do, we need this inspection. We're at the point where we need to order certain items so that we have it when we're scheduling things out, et cetera. I mean, this is a big system that happens when we are building things, and depending upon what type of, an organization you run, you may be a sub, you may be on pulling permits, there's certain things here. And when we can create processes around that have some automation, either task assignments or emails with that the communication goes back to the customer. Hey, we are at the point now where the next phase is going to be permitting. This is the typical expectations that we see from this. We want you to know sometimes this can go longer or shorter based on these variables. Here's what we can control. Here's what we can't. Oh my gosh, thank you. I had no idea that this thing was going on. When we educate along with communicate and have transparency in that, it builds trust. And communication is really about building trust and continuously aligning expectations.
Yeah, that's spot on, Tracy. That's so important, because one of my clients, big custom, beautiful custom home builder, when he took over the business from his father, the cell phone was just ringing all the time. Okay, it's whether it's complaints or this or this or this. So we came in and I said, well, let's create a communication portal. Okay, so they submit their question here. It's answered on this day, this time. Right? So there's constantly, but they can put their thoughts together instead of screaming at you on the phone. Okay, they can write it out, and sometimes that helps because they go, maybe I shouldn't say that. And they're a little nicer. But there's a process we created. Now his phone doesn't ring all the time, right? He doesn't have all that. Now it's all managed, and someone else can manage those responses, right? So we created a process. So you're exactly right. But communication is that cornerstone of any business. And you described it really well, right? What are the expectations of each phase of the project? Because if we're building, you're also getting draws when you complete phases. So we all want to get paid.
Exactly.
Okay, happily. We want to be happily paid by our customers.
Well,
and if they know when it's coming, we're good.
And our employees are the same way. How do we continuously give feedback? And guess what? What are those things that have your employees nervous? What are my benefits? What are my pay? If I do a great job, do I get a bonus? There's all sorts of things that go into this. And so some of it is, hey, how do we improve it? But another way to really think about this as an owner is, what are those items that actually derail employee performance? If we can solve for those, guess what? Now we can move that forward. And again, that's why I start with complaints, right? And not to create a negative, but if I know what the complaints are, I can solve for it. I have to look at it in the right mindset. But with our employees, how do we communicate that back and forth without overwhelm, especially knowing so many of our team members, this is the only thing. Oh, here we go. This is the only thing they have, right? Guess what? You can have all your job stuff. You can have all your payroll. You can have everything on this device that includes 3-question surveys. Who is the person you go to for everything that is the best resource on our team? You want to make sure that person is acknowledged and appreciated. And so often they're the silent ones.
Right.
Who's the person you never go to anything with because they make work harder for you? We need to figure out if they're in the right role or if we need to move them out to become a happy alumni. And so there's different things we can do to get a pulse on our people and ask some questions to open up that communication.
Yeah, it's so important. And sometimes, and I think you just hit on something that's really important to understand. You may have someone in a position, they're like, these guys just can't do it. It doesn't mean they can't do something else on the team.
Right.
You didn't have your system in place for finding the real gifting, what they're really called to do, but they came in because they wanted to work and you put them in this place because you had an opening. You just put the wrong person there. So sometimes it's that shift, just like someone might be a leader, you do not even realize they are. And though they had the skill set and the desire to do it, but they were just a guy, stacking brick, right? But they really had this potential, but they were willing to work, right? So there's a lot of great things with that. So much power in your people and the ability to communicate with your people that creates retention, better job performance, right? Higher customer satisfaction. They're a big part of why your customers are happy, right? Whatever that looks like because of their conduct and everything else and the end product that they're creating, really important. Mm-hmm. But I do one thing I always tell people too, with all of this, everyone, for the most part, everyone gets a great outcome, meaning like if I gave a picture of 5 kitchens, okay, that were recently remodeled, they all look amazing, okay? But you go and talk to the homeowner and say, well, wow, beautiful kitchen. Yeah, it really is. I go, well, tell me about it. How was it? You go, oh, I'd never do it again. That's the response you get. I'll never go through this again. I hope I never have to do a new remodel. Okay, that's where their challenge is. Your challenge is there, not your end product.
Right. And that gives you the information to go ahead and move that forward. And I am going to name right now, I am up against another meeting as we quickly.
No worries.
Love it. And thank you. I love the conversation here and the fact that we went, I think, over an hour with this. And I apologize that I had,
it's okay.
booked another appointment.
We're going to wrap it up anyways. We're good. We are good. I'm just putting a bow on this. So before you run, how can people get in touch with you, follow you? I know you do some incredible stuff from leadership training and everything else, both virtual and in person. So just give them a little map they can follow.
Absolutely. So elevatedtalentconsulting.com is our website. You will find everything there. If you love podcasts, which I'm assuming you do, and Richard will be on our podcast called the People Strategy Podcast, and you can find that on all of your platforms. So it's the People Strategy Podcast with Traci Austin.
Awesome. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. Traci, thank you for giving us the time today. Just a wealth of knowledge. So much fun having you on and just having you in local. I get to talk to you on the regular. I love it. So appreciate again the time. Everybody, we will see you on the next STS podcast. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Do it now.